All right, Chaz, let's get right to it. Royals first baseman Vinny Pasquantino, I know you know this, is nicknamed Pasquatch. And it's a big deal in Kansas City. They have some fun with it. Kids wear chains around their necks with a mini Pasquatch or Sasquatch hanging from it. The local news has done stories about it, kind of like Bobby Witt Jr.'s mullet. It's kind of a thing right now for kids and the fan base at Kauffman Stadium. The best part about it, though, is when Pasquantino reaches base, a life-sized creature, the Pasquatch, walks out onto the wall above left field. It kind of saunters across that wall in the same way that you've seen the legendary Bigfoot film, that kind of footage and those kind of photos. So it's kind of got that walk to it. It saunters across the wall, and then after a few seconds, it disappears, and it's gone back behind the wall. And that might be it for the whole game, unless Pasquantino gets on base again. But just like the mythical creature that the Pasquatch is based on, this thing just kind of comes and goes, and then it disappears. And to me, the whole thing felt like a metaphor for the Reds when it comes to momentum. It comes and goes. You know it's in there. You can't wait to see it again, but it never seems to stick around very long. Is that a fair assessment of the Reds trying to capture consistency and momentum this season?
Well, first of all, that was beautiful. Beautifully done. Round of applause here. The Reds have done enough to stay in the fight. There are enough encouraging signs that you're seeing specifically from Elly, from Friedl, from Stevenson, and from Steer that make the offense feel, in a way, in a better spot than it was entering June, than it was entering May. But Wednesday was another missed opportunity. The Cubs series reflected that. The Pirates series reflected that. The Reds have shown what they can do to compete, but they still are searching for so many answers from an adjustments, from an in-game adjustments, from a consistency perspective, from tapping into power. There are all these little things the Reds do need to be better at to get to that level that they're trying to reach.
It was a good 3 days in Kansas City. The Reds won that series. You want to win series. They pitched. They scored. They watched Elly De La Cruz have an Elly De La Cruz moment. But just like you just said, I left Kauffman Stadium thinking about how they missed out on the chance to sweep and also already thinking ahead, wondering what the weekend might hold at Wrigley Field in Chicago. Welcome into Power Stacks with Giesenslaw and Goldsmith, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Chaz, coming up on the show today, free Terry Lee. He's been one of the best leadoff men in baseball. So what does TJ Friedl say has been different for him about this season? Also, Terry Francona on the injured list. Got the story behind that. What happened to Tito in Kansas City? And Brady Singer says he was an idiot. We'll explain that story as well. It's all on the show today. But first, my Pasquatch story aside, your take as a whole on the Kansas City series.
They won the series against a good team. So I will lead off with a positive here. What you're seeing from Steer and from Stevenson, especially what that can do, and I know they got shut down on Wednesday, but especially what that can do against left-handed pitching, which had been a flaw for this team, especially what they can do with their power. When the Reds built this team, they slotted a lot of offensive production from those two guys who looked at their worst at different stretches earlier this season. To have them back is significant. It looks real with each of them. But then Wednesday, the Reds offense got nothing going again. They made a bad play in the field, and kind of you keep chasing your tail in that regard. But on the whole, you do have to give them some credit for winning a series against a good team.
And I also wondered, as I left the ballpark in Kansas City, when you look back on this series, will we look back at this series as when Tyler Stevenson found it, when Tyler Stevenson settled in? He'd only played, this series marked his 20th or 21st game of the season. You have to remind yourself of that. It wasn't many games, but some of the swings that he took in this series, had 7 hits across the series, 2 home runs in the series. Maybe that's the start of something good for Tyler Stevenson. And I'm not sure we've used the word consistent to describe the Reds offense much at all, if any, this season. We've used explosive. We've used up and down, those types of things, but in at least for 5 straight games, there was some consistency, at least 6 runs scored. And as you start to pick that apart, some of the things you just mentioned, Tyler Stevenson, Spencer Steer, but I want to take it to the top, to the leadoff spot, because we haven't talked a ton about TJ Friedl in the first, month and a half, 2 months of this season. But right now, what Friedl is doing from the leadoff spot, I said it in the tease, he's been one of the best, most effective, most consistent leadoff men in baseball now for probably 6 to 7 weeks.
Kind of Terry Francona's first decision. I mean, technically not his first decision, but kind of in a way, his first manager decision as the Reds manager was who he was going to put in the leadoff spot. You start there, right? It was not a slam dunk as I looked at this Reds team on paper heading into spring training that it would be TJ Friedl. McLean seemed like a candidate. Elly seemed like a candidate. Lux seemed like a potential candidate. Friedl was coming off 1, a down year, 2, an injury-riddled year that raised some questions about the consistency he'll be able to provide, and 3, a year where he denies it. He looked like he was trying to hit for more power. And TJ was just a different style of player. To see a healthy Friedl go all the way back to the guy who was at the plate in 2023, Friedl probably was the best player on the 2023 team, him or McLean. I don't think we did a good enough job praising Friedel's impact at the time for what he did and how he elevated the floor night in, night out of that team. And he's doing all that dirty work stuff again.
TJ Friedl, Terry Lee, as I said off the top, Sam and I like to say free Terry Lee, and it's appropriate in this instant. He's been the table setter, and as of the end of the Kansas City series, had multiple hits in 8 of 9 games. It's not just about hits, and Terry Francona made that clear when he described what he likes about TJ Friedl in that spot. He just wants him to get on base. He just wants him to do different things, however it looks. So Francona loves what's going on right now. I talked to Friedl in Kansas City. Here he is on making things happen, what's different for him in this season, and then his take on that splashdown bomb that Elly De La Cruz hit at Kauffman Stadium.
For us as an offense, we feed off each other. And when guys are going well, everybody seems to be performing really well, and everybody kind of rallies together. So I feel like kind of as a team, as an offense, and especially as a team as a whole, pitching been doing great all year. And with the offense clicking right now, I feel like it's just contagious.
Last night watching you go first to home in the 8th and the 9th, that kind of feels like TJ Friedl.
Yeah.
Those kinds of plays, is that you?
Yeah, for sure. And that's I think that's the epitome of kind of me is, leadoff single, and then just let the guys behind me get me in, whether it's, a double down line or an infield single tipped off a pitcher's glove that kicks into the outfield, chaos created. I take a lot of pride in that, so it's been great.
Are you playing free this year? I mean, because of the way you feel, is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to the best of my abilities to prepare my body every day to go out there and play, and having a peace of mind to go out there and just play free and loose. And it's been great.
I was thinking the look on your face for Elly's second
that was great.
run.
That's stupid. I think I don't know what my reaction was, but someone tagged me on it on Twitter, and I was just in awe. Like, his first one was incredible because it's hard to hit a ball at the center field here, but for him to do it on a line drive, that was insane. And then his second one, I mean, it just sounds different. And to see where it landed, I kind of just looked around and I was just like, it's not real. And, you play the guy for 3 years, and it's like he can't really do much more to surprise me. And then he does something different every day. It's incredible.
TJ Friedl said it was stupid, and if you go back to the broadcast of the game, that video as he leaned over the rail when that ball landed in the fountain, the upper tank of the fountain, his look, his expression was kind of all of us, and it was good to see De La Cruz have one of those moments. He's, De La Cruz, Chaz, is, I think, physically fighting it a little bit. I mean, no one would ever admit or say exactly what's going on, but you can tell he's fighting through some things like most everyone is. But for someone with his type of game and the athleticism and the speed and the burst and the explosiveness that it requires, you can tell he looks a little bit different. He's still having some of those moments and still helping this team in a lot of ways, and hasn't really taken off yet to the tune of what we know De La Cruz can be.
Here's something someone told me about Elly. This is actually a minor league story. Elly's been the youngest guy on every team he's played on. And when he was in, I believe it was Dayton, they had some older guys. They had some more established prospects. That was actually a loaded Dayton team in 2022. That would have been. And there was a conversation like, Elly, all eyes are on you. Like, you shape how this team feels, how this team kind of carries itself, the confidence and the swagger. That's kind of the responsibility that comes with being the best player. And Elly understands that. He to an extent embraces it, but he doesn't chase it. He doesn't go out to say, I'm going to set the culture and the standard today and plant his flag down there. But he's able to do that, obviously so, just with his production, with his performance, with his unbelievable sensational moments. That's how Elly leads this team. And that's why the whole boat seems to rise when Elly De La Cruz is doing his thing.
From the press box in Kansas City, I can't accurately describe to you how far it appears to be from home plate to where that ball landed in right center field at Kauffman Stadium up in the waterfall. It looked like a mile. And when the ball left the bat, it got there in a hurry. And it was one of those, I mean, the first one, you heard Friedl talk about the first one to straightaway center field on a line drive. It was impressive too. But watching the second home run, a lot of jaws hit the floor in the ballpark that night. And, you know, again, that's Elly De La Cruz. That's the capability of what he can do. And I had someone around the Reds clubhouse tell me, as we talked about De La Cruz, he said he's also one of the toughest guys I've ever seen. Just what he deals with, what he plays through, and how he wants to be out there every game.
And that's the goal that he always talks about chasing. It's funny, too. He's even said the question that he gets asked most, either when he's on the bases and one of the infielders from the other team goes over to him, or the other way around when he's at shortstop and the guy's on second base, the questions he gets asked the most are about his routine, about his ability to prepare, to be prepared to play 162 games. That's kind of right there on the top line of Elly's scouting report with how he's viewed and what he's most respected for around the league.
All right, let's take that topic into the manager's office. Let's do Tito's top two, because this is not the first time Terry Francona has been asked about managing Elly De La Cruz. A lot of those questions are about getting to know the player, getting to know the person, the right buttons to push with each player. That's for a first-year manager, getting to know a new team. There's a lot of that. But managing Elly De La Cruz, or someone like Elly De La Cruz, a lot of that involves managing his workload, or trying to make sure that you keep him in the best position to succeed that he can be in. And so it comes up again in Kansas City because one of the games in Kansas City, De La Cruz was the DH. He's appeared in every game this season, and he was a DH for the second game, I believe, or the first game of that series. And Terry Francona said, look, it's not a full day off, but maybe it gives him just a little bit of a break. And that did come in the first game of the series, and the second game of the series is when he had the 2 home runs. So we'll see where that goes. But the way Terry Francona explained it, he essentially said, look, I told De La Cruz, if you miss 1 or 2 games, that's not great for us, but it's 1 or 2 games. If you miss 1 or 2 months, that's catastrophic for our team and where we're trying to get. And so he said he's trying to make that clear that he's on Elly's side. He's in Elly's corner for wanting to play every day and wanting to play at a high level every day. But he said it's also about building trust with the player. And he said, look, I love De La Cruz and I'm getting to know him more. I think we're building that trust. But as De La Cruz works his way through this season and the season takes a toll on his body, it's going to be on Terry Francona and the Red staff to manage that.
Especially with hamstrings. Hamstrings are tricky. Hamstrings are things you've got to manage. Heck, I don't want to go, I'm not trying to make this comparison, but TJ Friedl came back very quickly from a hamstring last year, made it a little bit worse, and it had lingering effects over the course of the season. So these are things you have to very carefully manage. You also see this around the league. Not that I'm saying this is what's happening right now with Elly, but it could be. The word governor gets used. I'll tell you, it's happened with a couple Reds at different points this season. Hey, don't pedal to the metal, run screaming around the bases, manage this, be careful. That's happened with some other Reds, and that could be another thing Elly does to try to make sure he's doing right by himself.
All right, we're talking about injuries or potential injuries right now. And if you noticed the game when De La Cruz, the middle game, De La Cruz had the 2 home run game, you also may have seen in the Reds dugout, as that celebration kind of filtered through the dugout as De La Cruz rounded the bases and got back to the dugout, the 66-year-old manager, Terry Francona, was a bit animated. He was kind of into it. And, De La Cruz, when he rounds third base, I don't know what this is called anymore, but you know what he does when he sees J.R. House. It's something like I just did for the YouTube audience.
All
there.
right, so can I chime in for a second?
You're a different generation, so go ahead.
The dab has never been cool, and
That was it.
Elly can make things cool. I get that, and Elly is the king of cool. But are we sure that the dab is? I personally have never, just because I think, well, first you can imagine my dancing abilities, and 2, I've just never seen I guess maybe except Elly, maybe he's the only one who can pull it off, just like Burrow can pull off the crazy fashion that he does in a way that the rest of us couldn't. But
Could be.
And so all right, so let me keep going down this. The dab, I'd say, was at its biggest about 8-9 years ago, probably when I was in high school. Then when I was in college, it kind of had a corny comeback in terms of it was completely tongue-in-cheek. It's like, that commercial where the dad's like, "It's lit, man." Like that was the tone of dabs when I was in college. It's like, "Hey, you remember this dumb thing we used to do? Haha, it's funny." And so I don't know what phase it's in now. And Elly can do whatever he wants. He's a very, very cool person. But Tito couldn't pull it off, as we saw. I've never even tried. I've never even tried.
Right.
I'm not sure that this is the move. Even though Elly can do whatever he wants, I'm not sure that this is it for this moment. I think he can take it to another level.
2 things about that. One, I'm glad you confirmed as a member of your generation that it is the dab, because that had eluded me over the years as I'm much older than you are. The second thing about that is when you talked about your own dance moves, I recall a conversation in the Reds clubhouse when Joe Daneman said, "Oh, Chaz, I bet you were killing it at the Seven Hills Mixer back in the day, right?"
I just no. Keep it. There's what's the movie? Is Will Smith fixes people up. Will Smith is like this fixer-upper who he sets Kevin James up with some supermodel, and it's a terrific movie. Thank you, Kent Garrison. And there's a great scene in that movie where he's teaching Kevin James how to dance, and Will's like just stepping back and forth and snapping, and Will says, "This is you. This is your home. This is where you're at," and that's where I'm at. That's where I've always been at. And that movie scene is a good reference for what I'm trying to be.
But shout out to Joe Daneman, because the mental image of you at the mixer at Seven Hills back in the day, that stuck with me after that conversation. Anyway, all of that derailed the story. That's Terry Francona. Back to baseball, although not really. Anyway, as you saw De La Cruz get to the dugout, the cameras caught an image, a glimpse of Terry Francona trying to share in the celebration and trying to perform the dab that you just described. And we asked him about it. I asked him about it the next day, and he kind of chuckled, and I said, "Were you just overcome by the moment?" And he said, "Yeah, kind of I was." He said, "But Brad Mills started that. Mills did it first." He said, "The rest of the dugout noticed that and loved it. So Tito got in on it. But the next day, by the time that rolled around, he said, yeah." And he kind of got into baseball terms. There's a term in baseball, rotational movement. He said the rotational movement, he said he thinks it was an intercostal or an intercostal, what that injury is that some guys get, but he was feeling it a little bit. All of that to say, after we all got a good laugh about it, he said, "But you know what?" He said, "Last night in that moment, we had some really good personality." He used the word personality about what was in the dugout. That emotion and that fun that they shared in that moment. And he said, and it wasn't forced, it was real. And that it kind of clicked as he's describing that he's still checking some of those moments for his team's identity, for its culture, for its personality. And he felt like he saw some of that in Kansas City in that moment when the 2 elder statesmen in the dugout, Francona and Mills, were sharing in that dab from Elly De La Cruz.
I'll get into a baseball point in a second, but I'm not done yet.
Tell us something else about Seven Hills.
Why are we still doing the dab? We acknowledge that the whip and the nay was it had its moment. It was done. Nobody's doing the whip and the nay in 2025 like they did at my high school dance. That I didn't, but others did at my high school dances. Maybe if Francona wants to do a popular dance move from 2015, that's much easier on your midsection. But I'd like to see this pushed forward, but you make exactly the point. That's exactly what the Reds have been missing. I think their takeoff in June of 2023 was coinciding with like the key to the whole thing. And India told me this at the time was we let the rookies not just be themselves, but be the brightest versions of themselves as they came up, and they set the tone for the team. And I don't know, you all get grizzled as you get older, but let's see more of that, from Elly. McLean's a big source of that, and I think his struggles right now have an impact on this team's personality. I think Steer's a big driver in that way. Maybe him getting hot helps with that. Benson's first team all bat flip. I think there is a real energy and a spark that he's able to provide. There is a reason why the Reds are good when Benson's good for the most part. So there is really something to that, letting these guys be the brightest versions of themselves, helping a collective confidence and swagger that this team needs more of, because they need to know they're good for them to be good.
Agree. But back to your original question of why are we doing this? It's because Elly De La Cruz does that. And that makes it okay, and it makes it cool. And Terry Francona said he would take the strained muscle any day if it means that De La Cruz continues to hit bombs like he did in Kansas City. So that's Tito's top two. Now let's revisit, and again, I'm still without the bell, still on the road. There's something missing here. It just doesn't feel natural. But as we transition, I want to go back to the last episode, and I want to say again, if you haven't heard the deep dive on Brady Singer, Chaz, that was outstanding storytelling, reporting, all of those things on your part. And just like the Will Benson bump from our first deep dive, there appeared to be the Power Stacks bump again in Kansas City with Brady Singer and his start against his former team. Did you see that?
I saw just I'd like to think it was the Power Stacks bump, but I felt like the emotion of the night is kind of what carried him through the finish line. Like Francona faced that decision at the end. Do you let him face Bobby Witt Jr. or do you turn to Ian Jabot in the bullpen? Yep. And I think and it reminded me of like the San Francisco game. Like Francona gave Hunter Green an extra batter because that was his night. And he didn't finish. It didn't work out. Green was started yanking pitches and he went to the bullpen eventually. But sometimes it's your night and there's some extra juice that the guy coming out of the bullpen won't be able to replicate. And that was a moment where Francona is able to, I don't know, this is how you generate buy-in with guys, letting them have their moments. Singer made it pay off. Of course, maybe it'd be a different conversation if he didn't. But just in general, I will always go down with the person who has that extra something. I truly think that bumps up your ability. Like, I really think there's something there. And I think you saw that with Singer in Kansas City.
He said the same thing. When I talked to him I talked to him before his start and after his start, but when I talked to him the day after his start, I asked him, did you think you were going to get to finish the seventh? And he goes, when the inning started, he said, I knew that if anybody got on in a one-run game, that I was likely to be questioned as to whether I would finish that inning. He said, but I looked over at the dugout. I didn't see any movement. And so I thought, okay, here we go. Let's go. And that's when he faced Bobby Witt Jr. But you just never know how situations like that are going to play out, where a player is facing his former team, friends, and it's fresh for Brady Singer. You could tell as soon as he got to the ballpark and started seeing people and seeing the environment, it's fresh for him, the time that he spent there, the 5 years that he spent in Kansas City. And early on in his tenure as a Red, he has to go through all of that and deal with those emotions. But I agree with you 100%. He used them. Some guys, the emotions, sidetracked them. He used those emotions in the best possible way. And so after he had a little bit of time to process what happened in that game, I talked to him the next day about how he did that and how he got through 7 strong, winning innings in an emotionally charged game against his former team.
The first batter of the game's India there, and he's wearing blue and I'm wearing red. And, never thought we'd see that, obviously. But no, it was really, really cool just to face those guys. Obviously, a really good lineup over there, and good competition. Really, deep lineups I had to navigate through last night. So it was just cool to face your friends. Really, I've obviously watched all of them play for a little bit now, so really cool just to be a part of that.
With the competition over, did you hear from some of those guys, I suspect, on just what it was see you out there?
Yeah. No, I talked to some of the guys. It was just kind of funny to hear their views and stuff like that. But it's awesome. It's good to hear because, it could help me out too. Different things they saw and stuff like that. So yeah, it's obviously, good to face people that because you can get some information out of them and see what they have to say.
On Monday when you got here, some of those guys asked you, hey, what about facing Witt? And you essentially said, I can't even think about it. We're just going to hope for the best.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, last night, game kind of hangs in the balance. You're facing Witt in the 7th inning. Did that strike you?
I kind of, thought to myself, why are you in this moment right now, you idiot? Because you shouldn't, didn't want Bobby to get the plate right there. Obviously, I've seen him do so many crazy things. I mean, it's like I've seen every quadrant of his own with any kind of pitch to hit it out. I mean, he's truly, one of the best players of the game. And I've seen his, his biggest moments. So like I didn't, obviously want one of those moments to be off me. So yeah, I just had to, bear down and focus and, try to get him out there. And, it's just he's such a good hitter. It's, you just got to really, kind of think more in depth and think about, what he does good and what he does bad and just, try to not let him, capitalize on that, at bat there. And, but yeah, obviously really happy to get him out. Obviously hit it really hard, but flew it straight up, which was helpful. But, yeah, really, it's fun to face those guys. Like it's fun to, face the best in the game, kind of see how, your stuff matches up. But yeah, I was, happy to get him out in that situation.
I thought it was interesting what he said about now, since this is a team that the Reds won't see again, that you can go back to your friends and they can kind of help you with the scouting report moving forward on what they saw from you or what worked. And as much as he talked about facing India and Bobby Witt Jr., I also asked him, I said, what was that like throwing to Salvador Perez, who obviously knows Brady Singer as well as anybody, who caught him all those years in Kansas City, likely Hall of Fame catcher. And he goes, I literally tried to throw Salvi a pitch that he had never seen before, and he whacked it anyway. So there was the cat and mouse also of trying to deceive the player who knows him best. And then Perez, doing what he's done really well for 14, 15 years right now, and that is, making him pay anyway and taking a shot at Brady Singer. But watching Singer navigate all of that and then kind of the relief that came off his shoulders the next day was impressive. All the more impressive since we had spent the deep dive on Singer in the previous episode.
One more shout out. What a game by Jonathan India on Wednesday. I thought he had a fantastic approach against Hunter Green. And then that play up the middle of the ninth, I can't remember a play like that from Jonathan India. Credit to him for pretty much winning that game for Kansas City in the series finale.
Well, credit the Pasquatch for the complete splits on the stretch at first base, which is a reminder that if your first baseman is capable of that, like a hockey goalie, can make a difference, man. You can pick up some outs that way if you have a first baseman who could do that. I didn't think Pasquatch was the kind of guy who could. Clearly, he has greater flexibility than I give him credit for and than I thought. Let's wrap this up with this. This is something that towards the end of the last homestand, towards the end of that series against the Cubs at Great American Ballpark, this story kind of came, unfortunately, to the Reds. It's the story of Rhett Lowder, who you made the comparison last week on the Brady Singer deep dive that, did it sound kind of Rhett Lowder-ish in terms of, his coming up, Brady Singer's, and it kind of brought Rhett Lowder into the conversation. And then Rhett Lowder was in the clubhouse before the Reds left town for the wrong reason, because as his rehab had just started to ramp up and it felt like he was close, Reds got some injury news for Lowder. And Chaz, I wanted to get your opinion on this because there was no immediate plan for Lowder right now with the guys that were healthy. But where do you think Lowder potentially, if healthy, could have helped or could have fit in for this Reds team, depending on the situation down the road?
Well, first of all, like those two, or I guess it was two Chase Petty starts, like that could have just been Lowder's spot. And Lowder is a guy who took the fast track to the big leagues. There was absolutely no issue with having him getting some real time to sink his teeth in AAA and really get a fine idea for sequencing, for what his stuff is and how it plays, and kind of taking that next step. That would have been valuable for him. And then, you're one ricochet off the pitcher away from getting called up and it's your turn, or one, slip during a warm up pitch away from being called up and it's your turn again. So Lowder was very important in that spot on the depth chart that he was in. They'll miss him. And, it's shown up. Some of their worst games this year are the games where they've had spot starters come in. And he's a guy that will now probably have to build up and reset for a comeback either late this season or kind of just have to get his feet under him again next season. I wonder if he'll pitch in the fall league as well to try to get as many innings as he can this year, even if he does pitch in the big leagues, even for a bit in 2025, just to try to miss out on as little as you can. Because you need to do stuff like that. You need to get all these experiences in your, I guess, third year as a professional baseball player.
For Lowder, it's an oblique on his offside, meaning not his throwing arm side. Terry Francona described it initially as fairly significant. So there's no timeline, but you can, based on past experience, you can read between the lines that it might be a while for Rhett Lowder. So he was in the clubhouse. I caught up with him just to talk about the injury, what happened, and kind of where he sees things moving for him for now.
I didn't really expect it at all. Like, I didn't know that was a thing that could really happen from that, but it did. So.
Yeah. You described it as almost similar in some ways to breaking a rib in terms of what right now you can and can't do or what you feel.
I think early stages are pretty similar, just symptom-wise. Maybe not like the actual recovery process, but symptom-wise, yeah, it's like little stuff like coughing, laughing, sneezing. Anytime you like really brace that core, it's pretty tough. But it's all right. The pain's it's not like I'm got to play or anything like tomorrow, so the pain's whatever. It's just trying to do this thing going the right way.
So now rest and wait and see if you're a fast healer that way or how quickly you heal.
Yeah, luckily I'm young, so that is definitely in my favor. I'm just rest. That's mostly what you can do early on, and then it's one of those things. It's like it's hard to put a timeline on it because everybody's different. Like since I'm young and fairly good shape, hopefully that makes me come along a little bit faster. But you really never know with these things. It's like we're probably gonna have to check back in on it in a week or I don't know how long. I mean, I haven't talked enough to him about it, but it's one of those things you really just got to see progress, see how it progresses, and I'm just going to do everything I can to get back as fast as possible.
And then lastly, just for you, the hard part of you're fighting to get back and you think you're pretty close, right? You think you're pretty close, and now kind of the outlook for the rest of your year changes.
Yeah, it's definitely like a flip of a switch. Like you couldn't really even prep for it, like coming back from the arm thing, like and looking back on it, like not that significant. Obviously, we wanted to play it slow and do it the right way, but just sucks for something that's completely unrelated to kind of take the season away. Not completely, obviously. We're hoping to, kind of get back, but this is a longer recovery time than some other things. But yeah, it definitely sucks, but it's just part of the game.
All right, so all the best to Rhett Lowder, and maybe somewhere down the stretch this season, if he's a fast healer, Charlie, and good fortune, maybe he can help the Reds down the stretch at some point. We'll have to wait and see. Right now, the immediate thing on the horizon is a weekend set at Wrigley Field in Chicago, afternoon baseball for each of the 3 games. Chaz, give us a thought as you head for the north side of Chicago this weekend.
In the Guardian series, in what Francona was putting a lot of stock in, the Ohio Cup, Francona played his cards and he pushed chips in from a bullpen usage perspective. A lot of Santian, a lot of Pagan, a good amount of Ashcraft. He aggressively managed the bullpen in that series. Now, it didn't help you know, I mean, it was a move that he made for that series that wasn't necessarily all positive for the ramifications it had for bullpen availability for the next few days, but he felt like that really mattered, winning and getting that series then. Does Francona be just as aggressive, maybe even more aggressive now this weekend? It is a rested bullpen because of the long starts from Martinez and Singer, plus the off day. I'm really curious to see how, is this the kind of series where you bring in you bring in Rogers just to get one out at the end of an inning? Do you do stuff like that? Kind of a very aggressive style managing the bullpen, even though that might have a ripple effect after the Cubs series, because this does feel like a series that the Reds do need to kind of show them something and get rolling.
Well, he should have all those bullets at his disposal. The Reds in Kansas City got back-to-back 7-inning starts from Martinez and Singer. Even though Hunter Green only went 5, you have that. You have the off day, so the bullpen should come in rested. So maybe Terry Francona has those options.
Taylor Rogers is not the aggressive move, but like using 6 relievers in a game, like instead of 3, would be the aggressive move. And of course, those key guys at the top are Pagan, Ashcraft, and Santi.
The rest of the division, you know, Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, but the rest of the division continues to roll. The Cubs, the Cardinals, the Brewers, playing good baseball. The Reds, they're going to have to keep pace, and they can chip away at the first place division team this weekend at Wrigley Field if they can have some success against the Cubs. But it's a tough place to play, but it should also maybe bring out some of the best in some of the Reds after a series win in Kansas City. I'd like to point out, if we haven't yet, and then I'm going to wrap it up, I like to think of our show as you could do this on your lunch break. It's the perfect commute to work show based on the length of time that we typically go on Power Stacks. It's the perfect thing to listen to as you work out or jog. Just want to throw that out there as another reason to check out Power Stacks, Jazz. Do you agree?
You can be telling your friends while you work out or while you have your lunch break or while you walk your dog, or I don't know. That seems to be, those would seem to be the main podcast listening times.
I like it. So share, subscribe, like, check out the YouTube channel, and stay with us on Power Stacks. Actually had somebody in Kansas City come out of the stands and say, "Hey, I just found Power Stacks. I really like that a lot." And I said, keep listening and tell a friend. So I would share the same with all of you.
Can I give one more shout out?
Please.
The best Reds fan on the road circuit that I've seen was Sam Hubbard, Jersey guy from 2023, who was in Kansas City, who was right behind home plate, going crazy all 3 games. Unbelievable energy. Was not there this weekend. I just want to say, miss the presence. Hope you're doing well. Hope you get to a series soon. Hope maybe you were there in a different seat. Just want to give a shout out to that guy for leaving a strong impression, and was looking forward to catching up with his energy this week while he wasn't behind home plate. I hope he's doing well.
Maybe you could do some in-depth reporting, try to track down Sam Hubbard, Jersey guy from Kansas City. Be fun. Anyway, good show. Fun times. Chaz, keep dancing, man. And we'll talk to you next time on Power Stacks.